Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. This week's featured author is Alisa Weis. Since Alisa was little, she's filled pages with words, keeping a record of her imagination. Her love of the creative arts led her to pursue a Bachelor's of Arts in Literature Writing from Whitworth University and a Master's in Secondary Education in English from the University of Phoenix. In addition to writing, Alisa is an English teacher at Cross Point Academy in Bremerton, Washington. She enjoys running, adapting to life on a small farm, and spending time with her husband Justin and two middle schoolers, Trenton and Josie. Her next novel, The Last Culprit, has an expected summer 2023 release. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have Alisa Weis. Alisa, how's it going today?
Really good. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So today we're here to talk about your book. What is the title of your book?
Today I'll be talking about the emblem primarily.
Okay. And can you go a little bit of what the emblem is about?
The emblem is about love across color lines in the 1930s in Roslyn, Washington.
What inspired such a story?
I used to live over in the central Washington region, and I was writing for newspapers at the time and just did a lot of, local interest pieces. And so in talking with a historian, a local historian, I just got to know more about the history. And Roslyn was such an eclectic town of 24 different ethnicities at one time. And I was drawn to the graveyard and just started hearing more stories about the segregation in the graveyard. And I knew that there was a story there.
How big is the town, or was the town?
There are just a little bit, probably over 1,000 right now, but at one time it was booming.
Really? What was the driving market over there?
Coal.
Roslyn, I used to live over in Ellensburg, and we used to drive past Roslyn, and that was like one of our checkpoints. We're passing Roslyn now. Like, okay, cool. I think it was like exit 80 or something. I can't remember, but you know what I'm talking about. It helped us with that. So now, is it a fictional story, the one you had, or based off true events?
So the emblem is historical fiction.
Okay.
I wrote a companion series, so where I interviewed a lot of the descendants of the first Black miners.
Okay.
And so all of that research is on my website, and it's been published in a few different local newspapers as well.
That's great. So, I mean, how much research went into getting all of that done for your book and then for those publications?
Well, it's a little crazy to admit this, but I had started it over 10 years ago, some of the initial concepts, but I just kept finding conflicting sources like in the history. Like even at the Washington State Historical Museum, it said that a culture of hatred remains between the Black miners and the white miners. And then in other books that I would find, like Coal Town of the Cascades, it would just say that it was more peaceful. And so I just didn't feel like I was coming to a place where I knew that I could go forward with the writing.
Right.
And then it was about 4 years ago where I was invited to the Roslyn Black Pioneer Picnic. And I just started interviewing some of the descendants, and primarily the Craven family, because they are the only remaining family of the original Black pioneers that live in Roslyn today.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And all theyose interviews, they're up for people to take a look at or read about on your website?
Yeah, so the Northern Kittitas County Tribune ran a 5-piece series, and it came out a couple years ago, and it's also on my website. And I've continued, and I'm now interviewing another family, the Donaldsons, as well. So it's continuing.
And they live in Roslyn still, or are they in a different location now?
The Donaldson family is throughout the state, and they're the largest family of the original Black pioneers.
I like that you're going to do interviews with, family members, because I think that's just you're hopefully less likely to have conflicting stories. Is it pretty, consistent through the interviews? Like everything's adding up, or there's still some conflictions there?
So when the first Black miners set foot in Roslyn, They were brought over not knowing that they would be made strikebreakers. I was told just during the interview from Miss Ethel Craven, please don't call us strikebreakers. We're the Roslyn Black Pioneers.
Okay.
And so there are certain things that had I not interviewed some of the direct people or descendants, I wouldn't have known. And some people do, I mean, in answer to your question, they'll remember James Shepperson. He's an African American. He was a businessman that brought a lot of the Black pioneers here. And the Donaldson family will remember him differently than the Craven family.
Oh yeah, yeah, and sometimes there's biases there too, so that could definitely paint them in a
Mhm.
different light. But it's good to get multiple perspectives because you can kind of get a bigger picture of who the person was in the community. So for those who don't know what strikebreaker is, what is a strikebreaker?
Well, someone that comes in to break the strike, because a lot of times, especially with coal mining, you'll hear stories about unfair working conditions, long hours, safety measures not being placed.
And what's the era, the time era?
So where I was drawing from is 1888 and 89. So it's 3 years after Roslyn was founded.
So it was founded as a mining town
Yes.
for that purpose. Probably not a lot of good stringent safety protocols back in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
No, it's really rugged. If you look at a lot of the pictures too, it's fun to walk through that museum.
I bet it is. I would love to take a look at that. I mean, is the museum open quite often? Do you go visit it every now and then, or?
I do go visit it. I'd have to look at the hours, but a lot of like during the winter, it's not open as regularly. But there are historians that are willing to go down and sit with you at Pioneer Coffee, like just
Oh
if
yeah.
you pick up the phone, and it's pretty cool how they just love history so much.
So there's a group of books, Images of America. There's a bunch in Kitsap County here I've seen.
Oh, I
That
haven't.
Yeah.
I have the Roslyn one and
Oh, you do? Okay.
Ellensburg.
Okay, so
Mhm.
that was what I was going to ask was if they have a Roslyn book of Images of America. That's pretty cool. It was a nice little companion. There's a lot of pictures in that, I imagine.
Yes, Jamie Trimble is the one that wrote it. I reached out to her and I sent her the copy of my first book, and I really drew on her book for both of my
Oh
Rosalind
yeah.
stories.
That's great that you actually can pull from historical documents. That's an amazing
Mhm,
piece there. But I'm glad you got to link up with them. Actually, funny story, the
mhm.
guy who wrote the Ellensburg one used to be my boss down in Ellensburg when I was going to school down there.
Oh,
So
really?
Andrew Cavanis. Yeah, I don't know if you've met him or not, but
I
uh,
haven't,
yeah,
but
he's a goofball.
I've
Yeah,
heard that name. There are a
yeah,
lot of fires in Ellensburg.
a lot of fires. Yep, a lot of fires, and they actually in Ellensburg they have a wildfire department. The Forestry Service, and a lot of college students will go work with them during the summertime, and they'll go to Roslyn actually as one of their points of like, okay, this is where we're going to stay here while we venture out in the woods and fight the fire. So that's one of them. That and Cle Elum, I think, are the two they kind of hang out in that and Ellensburg. So those three cities, I believe, do a lot of firefighting out there. So with this book, what kind of feedback have you gotten?
It's been positive. I had the blessing of the Craven family,
Oh, cool.
and that meant a lot to me. One of the matriarchs, her name is Kanashibashan, and she just said, I want you to know that everything that you wrote and your research comes from a pure place. And I feel like I don't want to misquote her or anything, but she just gave me her blessing.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot.
No kidding. Someone who's, family ties with the story you wrote and they say, this is great. It's stellar feedback.
I should let you know, though, that I draw from a lot of places in Roslyn and events, but I make up my own characters and
Okay.
I make up a lot of the plot events, but just coincide with things that could be going on in Washington State. And then I stick to the history when I put the articles up. But I like to spin off so I can have like compelling topics, and just I like to make up my own characters.
Oh yeah, and it's hard. You weren't personally there, or you don't have family that were there. You're getting interviews or information from families, other people down there. It's kind of hard to make those inferences, like, well, how would they react and act like this? And so pulling
Mhm.
from a fictional standpoint in a historical time frame definitely makes most sense when doing certain stories. So I mean, are the major events that go down in Roslyn, are those historic in the story?
So I allude to an unmarked grave, and there really is what's said to be an unmarked grave. But some of the characters that are uncovering it, they're a figment of my imagination.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But at the end of the book, I have sources, so if people are interested in further reading, they can do some of the research themselves.
That's cool. Now, do you use like 30s lingo and late 1800s lingo in your stories?
So I do have a really talented editor. She's good at that. She'll point out things like, I don't think they would have said this at the time.
Okay.
And you have
Okay.
to, it does slow down the writing process, but it's good not to have your reader just taken out of the story if you have something that's inaccurate.
Well, that's really cool that you actually have that going on for you, because I mean, most of us would have no idea what the lingo is back then, but if you can make it as historically accurate as possible for the times, that's pretty
Mhm.
impressive. Now, I was looking through your bio and it says that you've got another book on the way, expected summer of this year of 23. Could you go into that for us?
Oh, sure. So it's called The Last Culprit, and I am toward the end of it, even though as a writer, you probably know you think that you're done and then you're not. It's a pretty tedious process.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really it's set in Gig Harbor in the 1970s,
Ooh.
and I have a dual time frame there as well. So I'll pick up in the early 2000s, and it's about a revenge prank, and it goes off the rails, and it's just about how about four different people handle trauma in different ways.
So you said a dual timeline. So you got something that the event that's actually going down in the 70s, and then someone telling
Mhm.
the stories in the early 2000s.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Oh my goodness. So is it got some comedy to it, or you said it's like, or is it pretty kind of dangerous and a little rude and crude to some degree? I mean, what's the narrative going with that story?
So that's a great question. A lot of times, I'm told that I need to go back in and make my characters more mean. I have a hard time doing that initially,
Okay.
but I don't like to leave the reader without hope. But sometimes, so I'm still working on raising the stakes a little bit because I've
Okay.
been told just initial read throughs, this is really engaging, but you need to go back and make this character a little bit more savage or just mean, ruthless.
Just blunt, just make them blunt and rude and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to do. It's like against your nature. Although I find that I try to be a very polite person. I find that I really enjoy writing rude, blunt characters,
Oh, do
just because
you?
I love doing it, because you get that good back and forth between someone like, the hero and then a bully, let's just say. I
Mhm.
love doing that altercation because there's always just that redemption quality, or that, I'm protecting a smaller, weaker person from getting bullied. That kind of notion of swooping in and saving the day always seemed a fun thing to write, not necessarily to experience, but something to write that people can, get behind and say, I really feel for this character and that character. So I always like kind of making rude characters, because later on they get their comeuppance, and it's always good to watch that or read that. In this case, it's one of those things that you have to grow into, because my first draft of my first book, I had very similar issues. I had a lot of very, like, almost sickly sweet honey, like, people, and I'm like, this is way too nice. I have to mean this up a little bit just to, make it relatable. That's what I had to do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. I'm working on putting more grit, even though I think that it's getting there.
Good. Yeah, it just takes time. It's just that editing process. About what's the length of this new book coming out?
About 85,000 words or so.
That's solid.
It might go to 90.
So I hear you're a teacher also.
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where do you teach?
So I teach at Crosspoint Academy in Bremerton. I teach middle school English, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade.
I bow to you, as
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. I bow to you. That is a good, energetic age, as far as I remember. I'd even use the word hormonal age.
Oh,
there's
yes,
there are definitely some fun kids, energetic kids then. So you teach English?
I do.
Awesome. That works.
I should add that I'm also a mom to a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, so I'm really living the middle
Oh,
school experience over
yeah,
again.
you are. Oh my, you got 12 and 14.
Yeah,
Also about you. Anything with teenager in it is just it's like a curse word to me. Do all your students know that you're an author too?
they do.
Yeah. What do they think about that?
Oh, it was funny. They just asked, "Can I read your book?" And I would just recommend my books for ages 15 and older. Not
Okay.
that there are some more mature themes,
Sure.
and so, but they think it's pretty cool. So
Do
they
you
think
like
I'm
tell them?
famous. I'm not.
Yeah. You should just play it off like that though, just for fun. So do you guys do any cool like projects around writing stories at all during the year?
Oh, we do. I have some spin-off journal entries, and I like to do a lot of projects, whether that be posters. We just finished The Hobbit in 8th grade.
Nice.
So
Good
I gave them a
choice.
choice of doing a poster, or they could do a podcast or a skit. And so it was really fun to see what they came up with. And I saw a lot of fun costumes. And they
Everyone
left
learns.
spiders all over my floor too.
Oh
Fake,
God,
fake
yes.
ones, but still.
Well, yeah, we got was it Shelob and all them and or the big spiders from oh gosh, the forest. I can't it's been so
Yes.
long since I've read The Hobbit. I remember it being good, but it's been so long, so long. Well, so beforehand, before we started, you mentioned that Emblem's not your first book. You have another one that's actually a Roslyn-esque one as well, yes?
Yes. So Swiftwater is about a moral dilemma that a switchboard operator has, and it pertains to some of the unions fighting, and so she overhears controversial information and has to decide what to do with it.
Oh man.
And I was able to weave in a murder that actually happened in the town, so that was pretty wild.
No way. So like an actual, like legitimate, historically factual murder that happened. You
Hmm.
weave that in. That's kind of cool. I mean, terrible for the person who died, but that's
I
really
know.
cool. Wow. Swiftwater.
Swiftwater, yes.
Okay.
And I was just inspired. I got to interview my husband's grandmother while she was still with us, because she and her husband owned the telephone company in Roslyn. And they didn't start owning it until the late 1950s.
Hmm.
So it's not as if she was there in the 1930s, but it's still switchboard operating. I got the gist of what she did.
Is it based in 1950s or 30s?
The 30s.
It is in the 30s. Okay. So still same era then. Okay.
And
Now,
I think that I'm drawn to that time period because I was able to interview my grandparents about like post-depression era. I still don't think there are enough books set during the Great Depression. We have a lot of World War II, which that doesn't cease to interest at
yeah.
all. But we
No.
need more books set in different time periods as well.
I totally agree, especially with the Great Depression was such it's a pretty captivating topic. I mean, you've got the fact that you had the housing crash and then the Dust Bowl just all of a sudden go together and the banks crash, everything just kind of perfect storming to the point where we were almost going back to a third world country,
Mhm.
and how the mindset changed from a pretty abundant country to we were on the precipice of disaster. And then I mean, the fact
Mhm.
that and then you got World War II came around and kind of yanked us out economically back to some kind of health. That little section there is definitely interesting. I mean, my grandmother was a Great Depression baby also, and she was very interesting how they talked about, certain meals had to be cut because of this, or how they had to ration certain products that we take for granted like crazy. Uh,
Mhm.
Wrapping paper being one of them. That was hilarious. She would cut open the thing with her nail and fold it after she was done and put it away for the next year.
Wow.
Even in the, late 90s and into early 2000s, she was doing that. And then she finally, after, she got to her great grandchildren, she finally threw those away. Like it's just a different mindset, cleaning out Ziploc bags and, little things that we take for granted, just throw away. Nope, not that era. So it's a different
Yeah, it's hard
mindset.
to fathom that.
So I think you were talking about You just earn your master's degree?
Oh no, I finished it actually right in 2007, so a
Oh,
while
okay.
ago.
Oh, a while ago.
It-
Okay. For some reason, I thought you had just finished. Well, that's great. Late
no, what
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. No, what happened was I finished it in 2007 and then my son was born in 2008. And so I was just torn about my career versus staying home. I'm glad that in our case, I was able to stay home for a long time.
And so then you've been at, I think we met about, I think last summer at a book sale. And you were telling me you just got this position with Crosspoint.
Yes. So I
Okay.
worked as a sub teacher in the public schools for 12 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So it gave me a lot of experience. I also did teach high school for a short time, but most of my teaching experience before now has been as a sub. Just to be candid, like there were some times where I was feeling like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. But now, as a teacher, I'm feeling like that just really prepared me because I'm used to working with the unexpected and shifting and adapting to
Yep.
situations.
Yep. Yeah, it makes you very versatile and flexible and able to think on your
Mhm.
feet. I had to sub for about 4 years because I worked in public schools, and it was just you show up today, I'm going to work at this particular class today. I loved working in small groups with like Title One and resource. I loved doing those. And like, you're going to go
Same.
teach kindergarten today. And I'm like, kindergarten? Oh my Lord. So I go teach kindergarten and be limping, towards
That's
the car at the end of the day.
exhausting.
It's so tiring. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, and I don't know where she gets the energy from. It's just,
Oh, wow. I applaud her for that because I said no after a while to anything below second grade because if you don't know the kids, it's just so hard to keep them,
yeah,
just counting them constantly. That's what I was doing. So more counting children than teaching.
you're losing the ducklings as you're walking. Like, no, get back in line. I found for me it was I could do first grade all the way to high school, first through fifth very comfortably. But kindergarten was just like, can I just go do something else? I'll mop the floors. Like, just don't send me to kindergarten. It was very challenging to engage with them all, 20 of them at the time. They're so exhausting. I love
Because
that
they
age.
want
What's that?
individual attention.
Yeah. Oh, they do. I remember taking a practicum actually out in Ellensburg, and I had two groups of kids. One was a third grade math group, the other one was a kindergarten reading group. And I'd go spend a good hour or two with the math group, and I'd feel pretty good after working with them. It was 11 kids, nothing crazy. And then I went to go work with three kindergartners for 45 minutes. They wiped me out. I was exhausted after 45 minutes. And I'm like, there's no way. I just don't have that endless supply of energy to give to those kids. They just
No,
need
or the
that.
patience for me. I don't.
Yes, I would say the same thing for you for middle school because whoo baby, they middle schoolers, they definitely tested me a few times when I would go and teach at the middle school. I had a couple great kids, but there was a good about half of them would just try to push buttons, and you're the sub. You're just kind of you're the person who's only going to be here for a few hours. So, well, we're gonna test you. We're gonna test you. So, what is one piece of advice you would give, maybe you give your students, if they decided they wanted to go into being an author?
I would just say that the best writing is rewriting, and there aren't shortcuts around it, that you're just not going to be finished the first time you do anything. And so, for the integrity of the piece, you need to put just see the process through. So, I really believe in pure editing. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but you do want to run it by one or two other people at least,
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure that you're being clear and that your message is being conveyed. So
Is that a philosophy you hold with doing projects in your room too?
I think that I do. I've had to do a lot of rewriting. It can be humbling. I think I'm a quality over quantity person.
Yeah, you should be. I think that's ideal. It's like, oh, I got 7 books out, but no one cares because they're not very good. I got one good book out that took me a long time to do. I'd rather see that. Take your time. I'm always preaching about don't let others like pressure or timetable make you put out a product you're not proud of. So, or a story you're not proud of. So, and that always went for, it's kind of hard to push that on like education because you always have deadlines. Kids got to get due dates and got to get grades in, but trying to kind of break that mental cycle of due dates when you're working on something really important, it's hard to do.
It is.
Yeah. So speaking of getting projects out there, where can people find your books when they want a good hard read from back in the Depression? Yeah.
Oh, I do leave the readers with some hope, but they can find my work at alisaweis.com. Invitation Books in Gig Harbor, it's a local bookstore, and they've been really supportive. You can also go to Amazon, but I'll just let you know that independent writers really appreciate it when you find us, because then you can also get signed books and personalized to people in your family. So they make good gifts.
They do. They really do. I encourage everybody to go and just go in independent authors websites, and it's just way, I don't know, it's just better. You can actually connect with the author that way, sending nice little notes and whatnot. I still will write notes and thank you for reading. Sign me, here you go, enjoy. And we also enjoy reviews. If you get done with a book and you want to review it, good, bad, or middle, throw it up there, because it's always, if anything, it's good feedback, and then it encourages us to keep writing good stories. So
yeah, agreed. Those are so helpful.
So Alisa, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy teaching schedule and writing schedule and family schedule to meet with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
My absolute
Look forward
pleasure.
to talking to you again.
Me too. A future interview, I always say is up for grabs. So try to do a year and a half after, see where you're at, would be always a cool update for the listeners and for myself too. All right, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this. Please go get a copy of The Emblem, and then look for her next novel, The Last Culprit, coming out hopefully around summer 2023. Sounds like it's about that. TBD.
It better be.
It better be. It better be. I'm waving a finger if you haven't, you can't see. It's very nice though. Anyway, okay. Thank you guys so much. And again, always stay mighty and keep reading. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.